Hello. Today I'm going to be reading the next chapter in The Clue in the Crumbling Wall from the Nancy Drew Mystery Series. And this chapter is chapter 4. It is titled The Haunted Walk. I hope you're having a nice day. We had some snow here, even though it's getting toward the end of April, but not much. I think it's dripping out there because it's all starting to melt, which is good because we want spring. So, The Haunted Walk. The following morning found Nancy, Bess, and George motoring to Heath Castle. By studying a map of the district, they had discovered a little-used road which led to the abandoned estate. Though this woodland route was rough and dusty, Bess preferred it to another boat trip. "Hope we don't ruin a tire," Nancy remarked, maneuvering the car to avoid sharp rocks. "How much farther to Heath Castle?" George peered at the speedometer, noting that they had traveled more than 5 miles from the outskirts of River Heights. "We're coming to something," she cried a moment later. Through the trees, the girls caught a fleeting glimpse of a sharply pitched, rust-colored roof. The car rounded a sharp curve, blotting it from view. Then the road ended abruptly in front of a high, vine-covered stone wall. "The boundaries of the estate," Bess announced. "Yes, there's the name Heath Castle on the iron gate." "And the gate is locked, fastened with a chain," Nancy observed, turning off the engine. "How do we get in?" asked Bess. "Over the top, commando style," laughed George. In her eagerness, she tripped as she sprang from the automobile. Nancy and Bess, following their chum, gazed with misgiving at the sharp iron spikes of the high, rusty gate. "I don't like the idea of climbing over that gate. There must be an easier way to get in," Nancy said, her gaze roving along the crumbling ivy-covered wall. "I'll not attempt to climb over any part of it," announced Bess with finality. "I have on a good dress." "Then you'll be left behind," George told her cousin tersely. She and Nancy examined the stone wall. Some distance along, it was a bit lower than the gate and offered good toe holds. It was not difficult for the girls to grasp the vines and pull themselves to the top. Bess finally decided to follow. Leaping down lightly from the wall, the 3 friends started through the dense growth of trees and shrubs. As they progressed, Bess felt rather uneasy. Beneath the canopy of leaves, it was damp and cool, but there were many strange noises to unnerve her. "Listen," she commanded tensely. "What's that?" Nancy and George could hear the sound plainly, but for a moment they could not identify it. Then Nancy smiled. "The cooing of a pigeon," she explained. "Come along or we'll all have the jitters." Before long, Bess had a bad case of jitters, bordering on real fear. She walked directly into a spider web, and as she was exclaiming, "Ah!" and brushing it from her mouth, something furry shot in front of her. She gave a little scream. "Ah!" "What's the matter?" cried Nancy, turning back. Her eyes opened wide as she caught sight of an enormous rat scurrying through the brush. They bite," said Bess. "I don't like this place. Let's turn back." "Not I," replied Nancy, stalking on. "This place is intriguing, and if it's going to solve a mystery, it won't solve any," argued Bess. "But it could make them all right." "Watch where you're walking and you'll be safe," advised George, somewhat annoyed. Just ahead stretched a long avenue of oak trees which gave prospect of leading to the castle. Trampling through waist-high grass, the girls came first to a vine-tangled, fern-matted bower. 2 handsome stone vases lay on their sides, cracked from having filled with water, which had frozen during the winter. "What a shame this place is being neglected," Nancy commented, pausing a moment. "Mr. Keep ought to take care of it. If Floriana should come back, she would hardly recognize it, I'm sure." At the end of the oak-lined avenue, the girls came to a weather-stained loggia of stone. Its 4 handsomely carved pillars rose to support a balcony over which vines trailed. Steps led to the upper part. Mounting to the balcony, Nancy and her friends obtained a fine view of the nearby gardens. They had been laid out in formal sections, each one bounded by a stone wall or a hedge. Here and there were small circular pools, now heavy with lichens and moss, and fountains with leaf-filled basins. "We still haven't located the castle," Nancy remarked, starting on again. "Let's cross that bridge over there and try that trail." She pointed to a rustic bridge which spanned a stream so clogged with water lilies that there scarcely was any space between them. I love these descriptions. "This old bridge is pretty rickety," George complained as they started across it. "Think it will hold our weight?" "I'll go ahead and try it," Nancy offered. The bridge swayed and groaned as she cautiously crossed to the opposite side. It held her, however, so George and Bess followed in single file. "I wonder where this leads," Nancy said, staring at a slippery moss-grown stone walk. On a rotted post nearby was a rustic sign with carved letters. The Drew girl stepped closer to look at the words. "The Haunted Walk," she read aloud. "Let's try another trail," Bess said with a shiver. "This garden is spooky enough without deliberately inviting a meeting with ghosts." "Oh, come along," Nancy laughed, taking her friend firmly by the arm. "It's only a name. Besides, the walk may lead to something interesting." "That's just what I'm afraid of," Beth retorted, but she allowed herself to be persuaded. Spreading lilac bushes canopied the trail. Their branches caught at Nancy's hair and clutched at her clothing. Impatiently she thrust them back, or held the shrubs for her friends to pass beneath. "I wish we'd gone the other way," Beth complained. "This is no fun." "I think it is," Nancy replied. "It's so mysterious here. It's so—" Her voice trailed away. At the sudden pause, George and Bess glanced at her quickly. Nancy was staring directly toward a giant evergreen. "What is it?" Bess demanded fearfully. "What do you see?" "Why, nothing." "You didn't act as if it were nothing," George commented. "I thought I saw something, but I must have been mistaken." Despite their coaxing, Nancy would not reveal what had startled her. In truth, she was not certain just what she had seen. For an instant, a pair of penetrating human eyes had seemed to stare at her from behind the evergreen. Then the eyes had blinked shut and vanished. It must have been my imagination," Nancy told herself. "Or possibly I saw an animal." She walked on hurriedly. Sensing her thoughts, Bess and George drew closer to her. Nancy rounded the evergreen and saw that it hid a fallen-down, decayed summer house. She stopped short, struck by the realization that someone had been lurking there only a moment before. Those burning eyes had not been a figment of her imagination. "Now what do you see?" George asked in a low tone. Nancy decided to keep her secret no longer. In a whisper, she confided that she believed someone had been hiding in the summer house, perhaps watching their movements. "I knew we shouldn't have chosen this walk," Bess muttered. "It is haunted." "Haunted by a human being," Nancy said grimly. "I wish I knew who it was that was spying on us." There was no sign of anyone in or near the summer house now, and the girls heard neither the rustle of leaves nor the pad of retreating footsteps. "Let's go back to the car," Bess proposed suddenly. "We've seen enough of this place." "I haven't," corrected Nancy. "I'm getting more curious every minute." Not far from the summer house was a stone wall. It occurred to Nancy that the person who had observed them might have scrambled over it to avoid detection. She announced her intention of climbing up to make sure. "Don't do it," Bess pleaded nervously. "After all, we've no right to be on this property. Let's go." Nancy was not to be deterred. While Bess and George watched uneasily, she scrambled up the vine-covered wall. Weathered stone crumbled beneath her fingers. Before she gained a hold on the ledge, she slipped and nearly fell. "Do be careful, Nancy," Bess warned her. "There are sharp rocks just beneath you, and goodness only knows what's on top of that wall." Indeed, Nancy was in danger. Agile though she was, she did not have the strength to swing herself atop the wall. Her arms were tiring, and she could feel the soft rock loosening under the pressure of her fingers. "Can't make it," she gasped. George started to reply, but the words froze on her lips. Bess, too, was struck speechless with terror. On the ledge overhead was a huge, venomous snake, its head raised. It was about to bury its fangs in Nancy's upstretched hand. A And that's how this 4th chapter ends. But I'm going to stop the video because we're 10 minutes in, and if I read another chapter, it will be hard for me to download the video. So I will end here, and I will start another video to read you another chapter. Thank you so much for joining me. I mean, this is new. My reactions to this. I really enjoy the descriptions of the garden. I like stories about gardens. I like stories about seascapes. And so that part of it kind of really keeps me going. And also the mystery. Okay.